Hey friend, hey, my name is Martina Lindo, a multi-passionate creative who is convinced we can all live the life of our dreams. I'm a brand strategist, writer, storyteller, wife, mom, and wearer of many hats. And I believe everyone is uniquely positioned to use their voice to impact the world, no matter how big or small. And I'm challenging you to stop playing small and bet on yourself. Think of this podcast as being one of those deep and refreshing conversations you have with your best friend. You know, the one all about the things you wish you could do, but not knowing where or how to start, where you imagine achieving your wildest dreams and desires without ever compromising joy. If there's something that will help you build a life you love, we're talking about it on this show. Welcome to Creatives in Bloom. It's time to explore your creativity, discover your passion, pursue your purpose as a creative in bloom. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Creatives in Bloom. I'm your host, Martina Lindo, and we just gonna get right into it. So, I think y'all know this by now. If you follow me online, you know that I am the queen of juggling multiple hats. And I take a lot of pride in it because it's taken a lot of time to get so good at finessing. And I'm very proud at being a queen of finesse. And one of my most exciting finesses is I still work 9 to 5, very much so. And so I figured today it would be good to share some of the ways that you can leverage your 9 to 5 to truly build the creative life that you want and eventually exit out of that or choose not to if that's what you decide. And so there's a lot of reasons why people will decide to balance a 9 to 5 with a creative lifestyle. The first and obvious is the financial stability. And even though there's a catch-22 with that because they can fire you whenever they want. But the point being is when you do have that 9 to 5, there is this false sense of security that exists. You don't have to worry about where the next check is going to come from because if you show up every week for 40 hours, at the end of the next week, you'll get a check. And for me, who also have a family, I carry the insurance of my family. So I don't know if you've been on the market for insurance recently, but a premium for a family of 4 is well over $3,000 a month. And I prefer not to pay that out of pocket, not quite yet. So there's just a lot of reasons why somebody would want to continue to work a 9 to 5 while pursuing creative endeavors. A few other reasons why, if you want to purchase a house, if you want to purchase property, you need to have that consistent income that shows that, yes, this person is qualified and can afford it. Again, we all subscribe to these arbitrary rules that are being presented to us, but if we want to get where we're trying to go, we have to leverage it at times. And so when you have a 9 to 5, or the thing that worked for me really well is last year, I'm proud to say that my creative business brought in more money than my 9 to 5. And that took a long time to get to, but that allowed me to take a lot more creative risk. And in that, I was able to invest in my own company, invest in a creative event that we've been hosting in Atlanta. It just gives you more room to play with money in a way that if you are trying to build your creative hustle, bring in money, take care of bills, all while trying to make sure it's working, there's just an added pressure that comes with, okay, if I'm only doing this creative thing and it doesn't work, then I'm going to be struggling. But if you are working a 9 to 5, a solid role that you are sure that's going to bring you money in every month or every week or however you're paid, then it gives you the flexibility to be creative with your creativity. But that only happens if you find the right balance of doing the 9 to 5 while also doing your creative pursuit. And so that's what we're going to get into now. Figuring out what is that proper balance, understanding when it's time to exit, and also figuring out what are ways that you can put yourself in a position to work a 9 to 5 while doing a creative thing. Because there are some jobs where it's just not going to work. So there are a few types of, I guess we can call them industry roles that lend themselves to be more adaptable than other roles. So if you have to work a customer facing role, like in the last job that I worked, I had to be at a computer all day responding to customer requests. Juggling my creative pursuits at that time was much more overwhelming because I was glued to the computer all day. There was zero flexibility in the role, and quite frankly, it was just very boring. I was talking about industrial supplies and hardware, and it just wasn't a good fit for me in general. But then also, by the time I got to the end of the day, I was mentally taxed. I didn't want to think about, oh, now I got to go write this brief or work on this website or go figure out what we're going to do at this event, because mentally I was exhausted. The role itself was just not interesting. And so the first thing that you want to think about, if you want to balance this double life that I live, you have to think about the role itself. Do you have flexibility? In my current 9 to 5, I have the option to work from home. So I can work hybridly 2 or 3 days a week. But honestly, if you have a manager who doesn't really care, sometimes you can work all the time at home as long as you get your work done. And so if you think about, what can I do? What skill sets do I have that I can leverage to find a remote job or a hybrid facing role? That's the first thing that you want to do, because flexibility in that position is going to be key to the success of you being able to finesse all of your creative things that you want to do. The second thing that you want to think about is, do I have the skill sets needed in these roles that are offered as hybrid or remote? And so a lot of that you're going to see in communication, where I work, or in customer service, but not customer facing, just in replies. Or so this would be my advice. Google online based on your skill set. So think about all the things that you know how to do. If you're good at typing, if you're a good writer, if you're a good storyteller, like jobs and businesses always need writers. They always need people who can do mundane tasks that are repeatable. So just think through, what kind of job are you already qualified for? Then see if they fall in line with what's in the industry, on the market for more remote work. But the first thing you have to do is figure out, is there a job that exists that's flexible, that I'm qualified for, and that's going to allow me to still earn enough to not be worried about keeping the lights on? Because sometimes you do have to take a pay cut check, or a pay cut, right? You might not always find a role that's going to be remote, that's going to earn you what you're used to. But if you think about the pros and the cons, if you're also going to be able to earn money while doing your creative work, then it balances out. And so then once you figured out, okay, I found the job, it's flexible, they don't really care what I do as long as I get my work done, then you need to actually make sure you maintain a good status in your role. So one of the things that I do is I focus on time blocking my day. When I meet with clients, if it has to be during my normal work day, I try to stack all of the work for that position at the beginning of the day. So sometimes you got to get up early. So all of this success in all of this is going to require that you have really good time management and organization. And that's something that I've struggled with for a long time. I'm not going to flex. However, after doing it for some time, you will learn how to massage your way through it. And so some days I'll start my day at 7, some days I'll start my day at 6. Now, if my husband's watching this, he's probably like, she's not telling you the truth. But I absolutely am telling the truth. Follow me. So my kids, they go to school and they have to be there at 7. And so before, when I wasn't like trying to finesse, I would start my day at like 8 o'clock, 8:30, because they don't have to get to school till 9. And so I kind of just, took the time to sleep in. But now I focus on starting my day earlier, getting them out of the house so that I can lock in on the work. And so when you think through time blocking and maximizing your day, it really is thinking through, what are all the things that I need to do? How much time are each of those things going to take? And then how can I best optimize the time that I'm going to take to do those things within those time blocks? But also, you have to give yourself mental breaks throughout the day. This is something that I do not do, but I'm going to tell you to do. Taking mental breaks throughout the day allows you space to just be creative and allow creativity back into your space. Because when you are doing a lot of things in a short amount of time, it can get overwhelming. But I would say success in balancing it all comes with being locked in on the goals. And so for me, juggling a 9 to 5 with a creative job, the benefits far outweigh the challenges that have come. And there have been a lot of challenges. There have been times where I have been scheduled in multiple meetings at the same time, or where I would need to have overlapping project deadlines. And so all of that comes with proper time management. Being able to overcome those challenges or see your way through those challenges is just learning how to properly manage your time. And so when I think about how to be effective in balancing all of that, you've got to think through what are the tools that exist that can allow you to be able to do that successfully. And so there's some tools that I'm going to recommend that I use every day that allow me to plan my day, stick to the plan that I'm actually making, and actually be able to see the progress as I go. So the first thing that I like to use is, I'm old school. I like to write down things in a planner. However, there's an app called To Do that's offered by Microsoft. And there's a lot of other ones that are similar to it that you can use. But what I like about this app is it connects to all of your other Microsoft tools. So there's an app called Planner within the Microsoft world and a few others. But essentially what I want you to get is, when you make a task list that is connected to a calendar, that's connected to a planner like Planner or Asana or Monday, any of those kind of like project management tools, you can see a full picture of the work that you're trying to do. And that's what's going to make you successful. So if you have client projects here, film projects here, and then 9 to 5 work over here, your brain is going to be just as scattered as what I just explained. But if all of the projects live in one space, you're able to get a full view of what's going on and how to best manage your time and the expectations of the project. Now, the nitty gritty of it, you have to be honest about what you can actually do. I have definitely been in positions where I've taken on way too much at one time. There was one time where, and it's crazy because you get excited about the money, right? Because there was one week where I like closed 4 different clients and it was like 25K for all the projects. Still had work things to do. Had an onset event and you get excited like, oh, I'm making all this money. But then when you actually have to sit down and do the work, it's overwhelming, it's exhausting, and then don't start with the kids. Because once you add children into the equation, if you don't have the proper support system, which is where we're going next, everything can crumble, and then your product, the thing that you're giving off to your clients, the thing that you're handing off to your job is going to suffer. And so what you want to make sure you're doing while trying to balance all of this is to remain productive, remain responsive, and remain effective. And so you have to decide, what does capacity look like for you as an individual? Is that 3 personal projects a month while balancing work? Is that 4, or is it only 1? You're the only person that can determine that, because you're the only one that's going to set your schedule. But once you find that flow, once you find that balance, then you can continue to show up effectively. One of the things that I know that has allowed me to truly finesse this as long as I have is I'm super responsive at my 9 to 5. They never know if I'm in or out, because if they need something, I respond. If something's asked of me, it's there. And so that's what you want to do, is figure out how to effectively prioritize task and time so that you're delivering on what you need to, but also being able to show up in your own spaces effectively. And so you got to be strategic about your time management and planning. And that all starts with understanding your value within the spaces that you're showing up. And so if you know, or if your job knows that you're really good at what you do, the time that they're going to have to take to find somebody else to do your role far outweighs them allowing you a little flexibility within your schedule. And that's what I did. I had a conversation with my manager. They know exactly what's going on. There's no like, oh, I'm ditching and dodging. Like, no, my manager knows that I have a lot going on, but as long as I show up and do my work when I'm supposed to, There's no issue. And so there's so many things that you can accomplish within this world of finesse if you focus on managing your time and be strategic about the things that you take on. So the next part of it is we don't want to do this forever, right? So you have to think through, what are my financial goals? One of my rules are like things that is keeping me tied. My goal is I need to be able to pay for insurance with no problem. I can be like, oh yeah, I take that $3,000 a month and I'll be fine. When I get to that place, and how I've measured what that place looks like is, if I've doubled my salary for 3 years consecutively, then I will be able to leave my full-time job. Or if in 1 year I make 5 times what I make at my full-time job. So those are numbers that I created for myself, but you decide, how much does your life cost? What does leisure look like? Because you still want to just be able to enjoy yourself. A lot of creatives live paycheck to paycheck, which is why many of them take on full-time work. So if you want to get to the space where you're no longer balancing both, then you have to say, what does that look like for me? Do I need to make 5K a month in my full-time job and in my hustle in order to say, okay, now I can leave? You have to decide what that looks like. And so once you've made that, give yourself all the tools that you need to be able to show up consistently, so that whatever timeline you set, if it's 6 months, if it's 8 months, if it's 5 years, at the end of that, you would have accomplished the goal financially that you need to be able to get where you're going. So one of the other things that you have to consider when balancing all of this is your energy and your motivation will not always be there. There are going to be days where you feel overwhelmed and exhausted. And that is me probably 90% of the time. But I'm so grounded in the bigger picture of all of this, like the big hustle, the juggling. It has a purpose. There's a reason for it. And you just have to remember, everything happens in seasons. And when you're in a season, you have to seize the opportunities. So the best advice I can give is, it's not about motivation. It's about the purpose. It's about the why. And if you can stay grounded to that, then going to bed at 2 o'clock every day will become easier. And there's some weeks where you'll have a normal week, right? But in those seasons and those times where you are hustling, when you are grinding, you will have something that's holding you, that's not just, oh, I'm just trying to get this project done, or I'm trying to get to the end. It has to be grounded in something that's more than that. Otherwise, your energy is not just going to show up in how you're moving, but it's going to show up in how you perform. It's going to show up in how you create. And that's the worst place to be, because then once you've created a flow, once you've created this like stability within your creative world and in your 9 to 5 world, if it gets knocked down by your lack of energy or motivation, or by your ability to show up, you're going to set yourself back. And that's what you don't want. You want to be focused on forward movement. And so whatever that looks like for you, if in order to reset, come up with something that you can do that allows you to just take a mental day, a mental break, a mental whatever, to bring you back to the grind, to the hustle, to that timeline of, okay, this is how long I got to do this. I don't have the energy right now, but I'm locked in on the goal. I'm locked in on the season. And so I'm going to make it happen. And the other thing is going back to the idea of like networking and being connected in different spaces and collaborating with creators or in people that are not in creative spaces, especially when, something that I've done a lot when I go to work events, like during my 9 to 5, I'm not shy about telling them about my creative pursuits, because it's opened the door for so many different opportunities. So many people think about me for roles, for things outside of the workspace, because a lot of people in the corporate world do not have access. They don't have connections with people in the creative space. And so if you are somebody who they can think of immediately, you're opening up yourself to a network of opportunities, to a funnel of new opportunities. And so whenever you are feeling frustrated or feeling overwhelmed, just remember that you're positioning yourself for the next phase, for the next move. And I know that sometimes that always thinking about what's next can also be a source of anxiety. It can also be a source of overwhelm. But sometimes it's what you need to stay grounded. The next thing that you want to do when you're thinking about balancing 9 to 5 and creative is building your network in the creative space. Because what a lot of times I see creatives don't recognize is the work that they're doing is valuable outside of creativity. It's value within the marketplace. It's valued within a lot of other circles that if you would just show up to corporate things that we deem as corporate, you would be able to leverage your skill sets in other ways. And so if you focus on building a network, you can quickly transition out of that balance because then you'll get opportunities to do more work. And so once you have that work balance going and you've made new connections, you have a network, you're creating a pipeline of opportunity. And that's what you want to do is if you want to be able to create your own path out, build a network, build clientele essentially of people that who have a demand for your skill set, who can connect you with other people who also have a demand for your skill set, and that will allow you to leverage more work on your own so you don't have to be so dependent on your 9 to 5. You have to be flexible, you've got to be open, and you got to think through what your overall goals are. What and how long does this 9 to 5, how long will it serve you? What is it allowing you to do, and how long do you have to do it to be able to accomplish the thing that you're trying to do? Creativity, like anything, is not a linear journey. And so if you are including full-time work in that process, you've got to decide what and how much you have capacity for. And so finally, when you think about leveraging both things, you have to see, what does my support system look like? And support for each of us is really dependent on what we got going on in our life. If you're single, not married, no kids, you can work 24 hours straight and be perfectly fine because you don't have the same expectations as somebody who's married with kids who then has other things to contend with. So if you're wearing the hat of 9 to 5 creative, mom, husband, wife, whatever you are, on top of all of that, your time blocks look different. Your expectations look different. Your responsibilities look different. And so having a support system, having people that you can call on if you need a babysitter, if you need somebody to help you look at a project, if you need somebody to just talk to and complain about how much you can't stand the people at your job. Whatever it is, lean into those people, lean into those resources so that balancing it out doesn't feel overwhelming and it doesn't feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Because if you have a plan and if you have a resource of people, then it gets easier to keep going down the road. Now, the final part of this is eventually making the leap. You don't want to stretch yourself this thin forever. And so we all have to have an exit plan. We've got to have a light at the end of the tunnel that says, for the next 3 years, I'm going to balance this working 80 hours a week until I can see the goal. And like I always say, you got to lock in on your why. You got to lock in on what's grounding you and all of the things that are helping you to make those decisions. And if it's not rooted in something more than just wanting a check, it's going to become difficult to sustain. Unless getting a check really makes you happy. If you really enjoy buying new things, I love that for you. So whatever your why is, lock into it and be clear about, this is why I'm doing this is how long I'm doing it, and this is what it's going to take to continue to sustain that. If you are struggling with seeing and being clear about that vision, then you got to look on the outside. And again, lean on that support. Lean on those people that are going to help you make sense of nonsense. Get help from people who have been there. Reach out to people who you see do the thing that you're trying to do so that there's clarity. There's so much power in being connected to community, and the sooner that you are able to lock in with people who are trying to go to the same place as you, it makes those sacrifices a lot easier. And so if you're a creative that's balancing and juggling a 9 to 5 while doing their creative pursuits, there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with you. There's been a narrative for a long time in our creative community that they look down on people who still are in the corporate space or work full time because you're not doing it right because you can't do it full time, or you're still, you got one foot in, one foot out. There's a lot of negative narratives that come with 9 to 5ers, but there's so many benefits to leveraging both. And so, if you again are connected to your why, your reasoning, your how, then being able to see success for yourself and prescribe it based on your own needs, based on what you see for yourself in the future, that's what's going to allow you to be successful. Not what other people are doing online, not what all the other people who pretend to be happy are actually saying. And so, if you want to be able to take your 9 to 5 to the next level by allowing you to level up financially, then you've got to make sure you've got that structure in place in your life to do it successfully. So just being connected to community is what I'll always encourage because of the benefits of those relationships. So if you're ready, lock in and get it done. Thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope to see you again soon.